I'm Jay Pitts, a real estate broker, agent, leader, and investor. For the last decade, I've navigated the craziest of real estate markets this country has ever seen, selling over 2,000 homes, moving in and out of markets, always ahead of the curve. And now I'm bringing that perspective to you. This is your resource, and Real Talk About Real Estate starts right now. And we're back, folks. Welcome back to another episode of Resource, Real Talk About Louisville Real Estate. I am your host, Jay Pitts, alive, excited, and full of energy as a common mentor of mine and today's guest, Mr. Darren Langille. I'll tell you more about Darren here in a minute. Let's pay the bills real quick before we get started. As always, we are live in our private Facebook group on, Resource Louisville. You are welcome to, if you are a local real estate agent, ask for access. It is a private group. It's not a secret group. You can find me on any of the social channels, or if you've got my cell phone, text and say, add me to Resource. We'd love to get you in on the conversation. You know, the benefits of being a member is you get to the live episode a few days before it goes live on iTunes and Spotify, but also lots of conversation. You know, we've got a nice little conversation about what happens if the government shuts down, what happens to financing, federal institutions, that kind of thing, just as an example. Would love to have you in on that conversation. You can find us on our Facebook page at The Resource Podcast. You can find us on all the socials at J Pitts Realtor on Instagram, at J Pitts Realtor on Twitter, J_Pitts on TikTok, as my fellow guest is a connoisseur of the TikTok. We'll talk maybe about that a little bit today. You can find episode shorts or full-length episodes on youtube.com/JPittsRealtor, and find us on any of the podcast platforms that you prefer, specifically iTunes. We would appreciate the 5-star review and the follow on Spotify as well. All right, now let's get to it. Without further ado, I told you when we re-kicked off Resource for this season that we were going to be going back to the guest model. Okay, I went, all of last season just solo. This is a personal growth kind of experience for me as well, standing without a co-host in front of the mic, talking to you about things that are relevant to your real estate experience as an agent. But I'd be remiss if I didn't use the network I've grown over a career in real estate and the interesting individuals that I have had the pleasure of having access to. Today is no different. I have with me the founder of Redline Real Estate in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, Mr. Darren Langille. Darren, how's it going, man?
It's going well. I'm excited. We finally got this accomplished, so I'm excited to be here, sir.
Thank you. So a little bit more about Darren. Redline Real Estate is a brokerage of about 85 agents currently, and the subject, they're spreading, they're growing across Canada. I'll let Darren talk more about that in a moment. I won't presume to know as much about his business as he does, but one thing that Darren and I have in common, aside from being lovers of growth, of improvement, self-improvement, all of those things. Darren's also a bit of a life hacker. I know that. A bit of a health hacker. He might talk to you about those shades he's got on. I watched a very intriguing TikTok about his life hacks that he's got going on the other day. Maybe we'll talk about that. But Darren and I share the experience of being a podcast host. And I thought it would be interesting today, as I see a number of real estate agents in my space, in my office even, venturing into the world of podcasting, telling their story through podcasting, connecting with clients, connecting with other real estate agents. I certainly count it as something that is instrumental to my growth as a real estate broker, as a team leader, et cetera. And I know Darren does as well. Darren is the host of the Re-Education Experience. It's an agent-facing podcast, much like us here at Resource, where he does, coaching, inspiration, and, just teaching more than anything for real estate agents. Also similar, he hosts a podcast that he's completed one season of called Live, Love, Local, which is a consumer-facing podcast where he interviews influencers, successful types throughout his local market. So, Darren, I guess really just to kick things off, and I thought about the answer to this question myself, so maybe I'll add to it, but I'd love to hear your perspective. What's the single biggest impact that being a podcast host has had on your, not just business, but life? Is that too broad for you?
No, that's we can dive into this one in a few reasons. I think maybe like you, when I started this journey, I was actually, we're in real estate, we're our own bosses, right? There's nobody accountable to that. We're, our wives maybe, but really they kind of believe us when we say we're doing what we're supposed to do. And as a business owner, I kind of wanted this self accountability to challenge myself to show that I'm learning, show that I'm like experiencing, and I could teach it back to my agents. And by being a host, it really leveled up my personal accountability around the things that I'm maybe like this, listening to somebody else, or YouTubing, or being like you and I met through Tom Ferry coaching, actually putting it into practice. If you can't teach it, you don't know it. And that's one of the biggest things that I find week in, week out when I'm sitting behind the mic, preparing to provide some value to the world.
So true. I couldn't agree with that more. Maybe to take it even just a half step further, and I know that this is probably something that you've experienced as well. It's a challenge. Now, they count what? Fear, on the scale of fears and how they impact people. Public speaking is like one rung above death. And somehow I've become comfortable with public speaking, but this is something entirely different. Putting yourself out there. This lives on. There is a record of this that you can never get away. You say something into this mic and it's out there forever. And just being able to codify my thoughts, feeling like I had a voice. I always felt like I had a voice, but I never, before the podcast, took the concerted effort to share it enough. My inner circle maybe, but publicly almost never. And that challenge was huge. To make people that paid attention to what I do say, wow, he can do that? Like that, I was addicted to it instantly.
Yeah. When somebody just hears, of course, you've got this like podcast, it feels like it's this kind of, whoa, way out there type of thing. And at first I even had this like a little gut check, even though I run, I think in our market, we're about the 12th or 13th largest brokerage. There's 300 brokerages in my market. And I still felt like, well, who's going to listen to me, right? And you kind of get a little bit like, wow, okay, you put a podcast out there and you're like, am I qualified to do this? But the reality is we all, we've built some authority, right? And you got to own that. And finally, like you did, step outside of your team leadership and brokerage ownership. I felt, I had a voice that maybe my agents have tuned out a little bit and week in, week out, but there was a larger body of agents that I could support. Right. And sometimes even it's funny, my agents will consume my content via the podcast more so than showing up for the brokerage meeting, just because maybe it's easier, right? The audio in their car at the gym, and I'm catching them probably more often now because of this other outlet.
Oh, absolutely. I kind of stole my question a little bit, or the answer to the question. Maybe I'll just ask it anyway, because and I'll preface it with, that was my answer to this question. What is, for me, the most surprising aspect of starting the podcast was that it fell so closely in line with the training that I was doing, and how many people engaged with it that would not engage in other ways that I would try to deliver content. I found that my messaging was always quite similar, right? I'd show up on Monday, I'd do a team meeting, a theme starts to develop, right? Tuesday, Wednesday, it marinates. record a podcast episode over a similar episode, hit crescendo at the end of the week with another large brokerage training and the same themes. And what I start, you see the same faces. I'm sure it is like this. I've been around realtors my whole life. The same agents show up to the meetings in person all the time. And the ones that never show up will never show up. And that doesn't mean they're disengaged necessarily. Especially that was the most surprising thing for me, is those were the ones that were listening to the podcast the most. And they would quote it back to me. And I just assumed at first that they were disengaged or they didn't feel like it was for them, but then they consume it in another way. So that was my greatest surprise benefit to the podcast. What's your greatest surprise benefit?
Yeah, that's a great one for one. The other thing too, you mentioned about living on, and I look back through just the downloads and the views on the podcast, and I go back to some of the original episodes, and I don't do very much promotion on this. This is really a true passion project for me. Kind of level myself up, force myself, like I said, to get better as a trainer, as a speaker, to the people that I can impact. When I go back, you see people scroll back in weeks and weeks and weeks to consume stuff as it relates to their business, right? So you might have somebody on in this agent-to-agent guest world that's focused on TikTok, and your group of agents don't care right now. But in 3 months, half of them are starting to think about it, and they'll go back to these episodes because you built this place of trust. And that actually is something that really hit me, was, wow, this content is powerful now if they're live and staying present with us every week. But it's also just as present and powerful because it's a legacy that they can go pull back to, and it's a library. And it's kind of interesting to see people use our content in that level of kind of care and respect. And that's been a big aha for me. Not so worried about the published downloads and the views. Now it's irrelevant. It's the overtime consumption that gets me excited that there was something of value put out to the world, and it continues to give. Absolutely.
I couldn't agree with that more. I mean, I knew there was going to be a lot of synergy, but I feel like you're speaking my words for me. I had a couple of very defined and stated objectives. I'm at this, and I waded in very easy. I had a very talented co-host for a long time. And not only was he talented at production, he had a lot of skills that he was really good on the mic, had an incredible voice. Made me look bad in some respects. He sounded so good, but he had this way of prompting me to get my message out, right? Sometimes he challenged me. Sometimes he poked the bear, so to speak. But I waded in with a lot of comfort because of his ability to steer the ship and allow me to find my voice. My most recent was much more of a challenge, learning how to carry time by myself and fill silence in a way that was interesting. But I came in with stated objectives. I wanted to become this pie in the sky thought of a dominant real estate podcast like Bigger Pockets is for investing, or that kind of thing, right? And there wasn't one that exists, still isn't to my knowledge. There's probably 1,000 or more shows like the ones that we do. Very, very functional, very viable in their own right, but we're not getting. I don't know about you. I'm not getting huge numbers. I get the numbers that I want. I don't pay to promote. Nobody's going to be paying to advertise unless they're like a local partner that really wants access to me anytime soon. But I had this pie in the sky idea, and that was something that I very quickly realized wasn't my passion. But I wanted to establish myself as the go-to person in our market for real estate knowledge, right? And I saw the consumer, although they were never the subject of the audience, I saw them as somewhat of an audience at that point, and that has come to fruition. I wanted to set myself apart as a broker owner, and I wanted to have a recruiting, bump as a result. That has absolutely materialized. And I wanted to make myself the go-to person regionally for referral business. right? Thinking that other agents may consume my content. And when I was made it a focus of bringing on Darren guests more like yourself that were relevant regionally and nationally, Tom Ferry, Chris Smith, Jay Thompson from Zillow when he was there. When I had higher profile guests, I did get regional and national listenership. But I can imagine that your journey, somewhat like mine, has not gone exactly the way you expected. And I'm interested in hearing more about that, because mine has almost solely become a training and leadership, mentorship type podcast, right? I speak to agents in my market. In fact, we were originally Resource Real Talk About Real Estate. Now we're Real Talk About Louisville Real Estate. We added our local market name in it to reflect the idea that this is about us and having success here. So I guess tell me a little bit, how has it been how has it been different than you expected? Maybe give me just quickly, if you don't mind. I mean, It doesn't have to be drawn out.
Well, if you look out into my history, I think I'm on the 24th episode of mine is going to launch on Friday. And again, just like you, I started it as a solo episode style thing. I didn't start with the guest model. I had the idea that guests would come and pulling into people like yourself to bring value beyond my own personal experience and teaching, right? I mean, my agents get me all the time, right? And they have me on one-on-one coaching and they have all that. But the rest of the world, the people I'm looking to impact, they don't generally have that level of ongoing proactive coaching, right? If you think of the typical realtor at the typical brokerage, really is on an island all by themselves, right? They're in the big ocean swimming, right? And not everybody gets to benefit from like a local leader like you, or in our case, we have a really strong culture. So I really felt that I had something to share. And for me, I haven't pulled it to a local place like you. Like I saw that you saw your transition there. And I think it's because our red line entity, we're now pulling across the nation. And probably into the US based on our recent changes at our company. So I'm looking to just get to that broader group of realtors that could take value. And we have 300 plus brokerages in our market, a lot of independent onesie twosies, a few team-based, and then a whole bunch of big national franchise models where, again, the agents are left on their own. So I really felt like, hey, it's time to put this out there and see if we can drive, if we can help coach more realtors, they'll get better at their craft. And then if they get better at their craft, the industry looks better than as a whole. And I'm kind of like this, I don't know, feel like this utopia that I have this ability to maybe put my little dent to raise up the industry. And I do that inside our red line walls, but also with a voice like this, because I want our industry to be continued to look on well and better and not worse with a lot of the disruptions that keep coming our way and try to kind of steal our cooking, if you know what I mean.
Sure. Absolutely. I literally, we were a little late in getting started here today because I was in a recruiting meeting that just ran long. And one of the concerns was a gentleman moving, I won't digress too much with this, but gentleman moving industries. And one of his concerns, he's drawn in a lot of ways to the real estate industry, but one of his concerns is his peer group does not look upon realtors in a terribly favorable fashion. And he heard that we were different. He wanted to come see for himself. He would be a new to the industry type real estate agent. And I think by the end of the conversation, he saw how we could make a significant difference in people's lives. And that I've been very, very much addicted to as a leader, as a mentor, as a broker, is just, kind of being a caretaker of that, that reputation that in some ways ranks just maybe slightly above a used car salesman or an ambulance chasing attorney type,
So actually some of the best agents, and this maybe doesn't help the cause, but some of the best agents at my office have come from the car sales world, because they learned those skill sets of just interaction. The biggest change they've had to make is this is a long tail business, right? This is a relationship business, not a get you before they leave the door business.
Right.
And, but I think you're right. I mean, I don't know. I love the chase. I love the ability to connect as a realtor one-on-one while you're helping somebody through a life transition.
Sure.
That doesn't go away as a team leader, and I'm not doing the production that I used to do just as a solo agent growing my team. But now these little moments where an agent can reach back and say, hey, I tried that strategy out, or I love what so-and-so guest said and I put it into practice. That stuff, I don't know, that gets me like the goosebumps. That's the stuff that I think wakes me up every day to find that I've made an impact. And that's, I think, why I care to do this so much, right? It's locally and then everybody else. Because again, there's no one way to do this business. So.
No, I am in total agreement. I don't, like you, I don't do the production that I once did. But I've found myself, the way I was addicted to making a difference for my clients when I was showing houses at all hours or taking listings or negotiating deals and multiple offers, I find I scratch that same itch in helping people live better lives through a career in real estate. And that's been incredible. So, Darren, I know that this is, something we're doing, as a collaboration today. And I don't want to I know I've kind of dominated the first portion as we sit here, but I'd be remiss if I didn't yield the floor to you. I know you've got some questions, maybe put me on the hot seat a little bit. Maybe we can take another few minutes and see what, if you can't maybe stump the chump on this direction. What do you think?
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, the question I had for you, because you were doing this before I was doing this, and again, I've respected you as a leader and a full out real estate pro for years. And plus, you do have a great voice, by the way. So you shouldn't have never felt like whoever your co-host was must have been like Barry White.
Dude, he was great. He was great. I mean, and it's like he's it's just one of those guys. He has impossibly good hair, like handsome young dude. He's like 10 years younger than me. So the gray in the beard, I've got that going for me too. But he stands up and plays acoustic guitar and sings in front of 5,000 people in church, and he's got a great radio voice. So anyway.
Amazing. Yeah. So okay, I forgot. I concede. He wins. The question I had for you that I was excited to chat with you about is, again, you've done a bunch of these solo shows. You've taught a lot of folks. There's been a lot thrown at us in this business, right? With the social media platforms, the rise of all this short form video. But then there's the traditional ways for which realtors continue to dominate their circles of influence and their spheres. As you've taught, heard, brought guests on, what are some of the themes that continue to rise to the top about why and how realtors continue succeeding in such, a distraction-filled world? I don't know. I have a hard time getting agents to do something consistently for a period of time so they can generate results, because they think there's this magic pill. There's this redeployed efforts that is coming. So I'd love to just grill in to see, what are you finding still today at the end of 2021 is still driving home true revenue for realtors?
We are still, okay, and I am a proponent of lead sources, inbound marketing, ways to grab attention. I've always seen what we do as a matter of two endeavors. And I don't know if this is technical marketing, 101 or 401, whatever. But I always see it as two endeavors. And when it comes to finding business, there is direct response marketing and there is brand engagement marketing. And I think a healthy business has some of both. Okay. Now, I witness seasoned agents in my market that are 100% brand engagement. It's all past clients, sphere of influence, and, friend of friend. If they do anything, it's an event. If they do anything, it's a mailer to their past clients. And there's a place for that. And it definitely yields results. As a progressive organization that believes in direct response also, to drive new relationships, we remain 60% sphere of influence and past client. Okay. So that is tried and true. And there is no substitute for investing your personal self into your clients. There is no degrees of separation. I'm not a big closing gift person. I think in a lot of cases they're contrived. I don't want to show up with a bottle of wine unless it's a special bottle of wine, right? I don't want to show up with a bottle of bourbon unless it is a special bottle of bourbon, right? I don't want to be the person that does something to do it. I want to be the person that does something to make an impact, right? So when it comes to my network, I coach on and I personally do things that grab attention. I would come closer to like coming over after a walkthrough and there is something preventing the closing and doing it, mopping the floors. I would come closer to mopping the floors than showing up with a $50 gift card to some random restaurant, right? Like I'd rather do that. And I teach my agents to do it. Like, for example, I had an agent literally the other day that got in her car, picked up her client and drove to Nashville 3 hours away because her bank was a Wells Fargo branch. We don't have those in Louisville, and they would not wire more than $10,000 per day. And she drove her to pick up a $70,000 cashier's check so the closing didn't have to get delayed 6 days. Like, that's an impact on your, right. That is something that lady will never forget. So I believe in that, but I also believe in a healthy amount of interjecting new people into your world that you wouldn't have had the opportunity to meet otherwise. And I think that there are several platforms that yield that sort of opportunity now. And, you know, I think they're expensive. Okay. But as long as you run your numbers the right way and you understand what's profitable and what's not, and that you're investing more for the long term than you are for right now and today, I think that there's a place for it. I've very simple math, Darren. I believe a client's second time using you is potential 400% of the revenue of the first time. And the way I've done that math, and you guys have way higher numbers than us. We're small numbers here, small sales prices. But let's say you sell somebody a $150,000 house, which is a cheap house here. Okay, less than market median. In 5 years, they come back. That house is worth $250,000. They buy a $450,000 because most everybody is a move-up purchase. You know, a great percentage of them. So you get two sides, not one, and you get $450,000 plus $250,000 instead of $150,000. When you adjust for fallout rate, you get about 4x the revenue the second time they work with you. So even if I have to give away a lot of dollars up front to get that lead, that $150,000, or I have to pay a big referral fee to a Home Light or what have you, it's still worth it because I'm banking on year 7 when I'm still in the business and they repeat with me.
Yeah, you know what? That's a great point. And I love the way you set that up pretty simply between direct response and like that personal brand and engagement. And I love how you carry that through. The reality is, I mean, to continue with the sphere of influence, your past client list, there's a sequence of events that you got to keep doing to stay present, to have mind share, to stay top of mind. So it's a lot of effort, but a lot of agents, I mean, yes, 60% is great. We have agents in our body that are 90%, and that's where they go. And I always think, okay, here's the opportunity now for an agent to kind of play the other game, right? Well, how about if the lead comes into your world where you're not having to always chase for it, and now you're playing a conversion game and not always finding a new game. And some, like you said, the Home Lights, referral-based websites, agent-to-agent referral networks, or even just paying for leads, just the fact that it's landing in your lap without you having to go get it is a nice kind of weight off your shoulders, because now you can convert to conversion versus always chasing. And I think that that's a healthy dynamic that a lot of agents need to kind of play out as they're building out their plans. Very cool. And I love that authenticity of just like make it an impact moment, a wow moment, like do it for, not do it to be remembered, but by just naturally having your ear on the ground and doing beyond the transaction, not just facilitating something within the transaction that you kind of feel you should do,
Yeah.
but like I read something the other day. It was in this old sales book, like from the 90s, and it was something to the effect of, what are you doing to build trust beyond the actual act of doing the piece of business,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And that's where the care that comes in about some of these 3-hour trips, or reaching out because of a personal thing that you saw was going on beyond this big life change that's happening in the transaction.
Sure. I mean, I could cite a number of examples. I mean, but that's just it. Being memorable is so often aligned with, providing value, of, building relationships beyond business. It's just, I sold somebody an entry-level home, modest price. And throughout the course of showing these people homes, the wife had expressed how she loves champagne, good champagne, but she didn't have the money to buy really expensive champagne. I show up with a $300 bottle of champagne, but like if I paid for a $50 closing gift for every client that I didn't have a connection with, that didn't make a difference, it would be a little harder to justify a $300 gift that makes a really big impact. But, and it just so happens, not that I did it for that reason, but that client's referred me probably 12 clients since then. But it's just about caring enough to notice. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, there's a business plan just around that. And the reality, like I use this term, like, don't let one equal one. Just don't let it happen. So many agents focus on the transaction, and then they get busy, and then they even focus more just on the transaction. And then they're saying, well, all right, the valley, I'm in the valley, Darren. I got no more business. Well, it's because you had a transaction-based mindset for your busy season, and you've missed all these opportunities to turn one equal to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. And like you're saying, that doesn't have to be when they buy again in 5 years. You can make 1 equal 5 inside the transaction itself, based on just selective action taking by being a realtor that's present to the journey that you're on, right? Like the pre-marketing, the launch marketing, the post-marketing, I use a term called regrowth, right? Where it's like monetizing the success of the current position that you're in, supporting a client's, buy or sell. And man, that's when the ROI on care and the ROI on intention to the present day transaction can completely flip your life overnight as a realtor.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more, man. I mean, there's so many opportunities. You have to look for them. You have to look for those opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, and you're switching over. I mean, I wrote this thing down when I was just thinking of some prep notes and about this whole idea of a podcast. And not everybody needs to start a podcast who's listening to this, but
Right.
it's this ability, because of the platforms we all have, like to launch a podcast like this actually is way easier than you would think, right? It's
It
the
really
more
is.
and the thought process behind it that takes the effort and the consistency. But because of the voice, so we have this ability to be a voice, which can then be used to build your voice, right? So if you just force your way into this audio world, or in any, it could be the short form content, you are building this place of authority, that your clients, even though your clients will start to notice, they'll see that you're leveling up your game. And that in itself is never a call to action, but it just levels you up as a realtor in your local marketplace. So I think as agents listen to this and they've heard hosting a podcast, and it might seem a bit beyond where they want to go with their business, and you and I are just spitballing about it, but that ability to be a voice and allow that to start building your voice, will honor your business in a huge way. What do you have to say about that?
I agree. And I'm sure there are businesses similar. I know the particular company, and I guess I'll shout them here. Speakeasy Podcast Network is a business, Wayne Media. They're here in Louisville, and they've got an office in Michigan. I've had a number of my agents, since what the perceived success, I won't say it is or isn't success. I think it's successful. I'm not, it's not a national podcast, But the perceived and actual success of Resource, I've had a number of my agents come to me with the idea of potentially starting podcast. And I've encouraged all of them because, like you said, execution is easier than you think, especially with a company like Speakeasy. They have a studio. You pay them a set amount each month. You get a set amount of time. They handle all the distribution. They can even handle the social marketing and the budget management if you prefer. But the truth is, we are in an industry that has some notoriety, right? People are interested in real estate. They're interested in buying, selling, investing real estate. It's very voyeuristic in nature, but anyone who's worked with a really good real estate agent, I think has probably had the thought of what would it be like to be a real estate agent. The one in particular that's of my agents that's executed is a mom of 4. Her podcast is titled Messy Success because, her life is quite chaotic. She has this massive real estate practice, 100 plus transactions a year personally, 7-8 agents on her team, 4 kids, very busy. And she just makes it work. She's a boss. I mean, this girl kills it. And she gets people all the time that just want to know how she does it all, how she manages it. And so I said, look, take 30 minutes out of your day and go put it on audio. People can listen to it in their car, and just that introspection, right? That look at what it takes binds people to you, people you don't even know, right? They'll see it on Facebook. They'll see their friends share it on Facebook and they'll think, what's this about? And they'll click on your link and they'll find out what Tracy's all about, right? So using your voice to amplify your voice. I mean, what is it? My dad used to say, start where you stand and better tools will avail themselves, right? And so I just started talking into the mic, man. And I didn't know what the heck I was going to say or if anybody was going to pay attention, but it became more clear to me once I made the commitment to do it. And there's just too many tools out there now, too many opportunities to amplify your voice that if people like what you have to say, you'll know it.
You'll find your tribe, right? Your tribe will find
Absolutely.
you. You'll find your tribe. We all have one. We all have a different take on how this business should go, and we have a different flavor. And with the audio world, it takes away that concern about how's my hair, how's my makeup, how's my double chin going? Is my angle wrong, right? I mean, there's so many of that comes into this business, men and female, right? We both.
Oh, we're both like it.
And that leads into this concept of my other podcast that we were chatting about, Live, Love, Local. And it forced me finally to say, Darren, you need to actually be a little better at your business to business relationships. You might do pretty well with your business consumer, because if you look at my history or yours, you'll say, okay, this guy's done okay from a real estate standpoint. But business to business, I always felt I left a lot on the table, right? And I wanted to connect with more business owners. And I know we've seen it through coaching, Tom Ferry, all the stuff about, we've seen people gone out there and just charted these awesome journeys through local businesses, eateries, pubs. Well, this platform is easy to use to then connect. And I can't believe the people that said instantly yes from an Instagram DM that I've never spoken to says, yes, Darren, I'll come on your podcast. It was like within minutes. It was like we talk about the text response rates, about how that's so quick versus email. The DMs from like local key influencers, business owners, they have a message that they want out there and you're giving them a chance to go share it. And I could have went bigger. I went to some big names locally. And it created, like you said, a little buzz. You bring on a Tom Ferry, you bring on a bit of buzz to your local agent-to-agent podcast. But when it's a community-driven podcast, and that might be a place where an agent starts, wow, you will not be disappointed if you just simply ask and go out and reach, because people want their message out there. So, I'd love to hear your take on that.
Well, yes, I lament that I had not, and we'll reboot. We'll get back to it. I did 5 episodes of a very similar show, and I found it very challenging to schedule, which is it was more about me than it was ever about them, because I had not made it a big enough priority in my world that I was prepared to, sacrifice certain things to be available when these very important people were available to me. But I agree. I'll ask the question, what's more local than real estate? There's nothing. I mean, people base, their greatest financial decisions on what lifestyle they would like to lead. And, on top of that, we live in we operate in a very entrepreneurial industry. And so someone that has success in real estate is rooted in local, is very appealing to someone who has an agenda, right? Like a leadership or a product to sell or a business to, promote that is doing big things in a community. They want to ally themselves with successful real estate people to amplify their message. And so I think it's a match made in heaven, truthfully. I just should have probably I had some really good ones, and you're right. I could have reached up a lot higher. You see guys like, what's Jimmy in Salt Lake with Bill?
Oh, Jimmy Rex. Yeah.
Jimmy Rex, man. Jimmy Rex had, senators and, celebrities, serious. He had Mitt Romney on his podcast. I'm thinking, okay, well, any way you slice it, whatever your politics are, the man is a United States senator, and there are only 50 of those in the United States. That's pretty exclusive, if you ask me. So, no, 100. I'm sorry, there's 100. 50 on each side. But either way, that was a big get, and I was quite impressed when I heard that. So maybe I ought to step my game up a little bit. I don't know. We'll have to see.
Here's a funny thought. So we started a little charity locally, charitable group where we take on local garments and we make them, and we have this Live Love Local brand, and all the profits go to a local charity, and we support the local business. We purchase everything that they would ever need through the local business and then donate them the money. So it's kind of like a double give. And when I was starting this, and I started to chat with some other local podcast hosts, and then they'd say, Darren, well, how'd you get so-and-so on that podcast? I said, well, I just asked. That was it.
Just ask.
He's like, and instantly he's like, well, you must be doing really well and all this other stuff. And I'm like, I'm just getting going. And all I did was ask. And it's so funny that so much of our business as realtors can come down to that thing. Did you ask? Or did you just ask for that? Did you ask the question? Did you ask for the referral? Did you ask them if they wanted to know about the home that you just sold down the street? Did you ever just ask rather than hope that they just mythically came up to you and said, I've got lots of money, I want to buy everything you can, right? It doesn't really happen.
I couldn't agree more. One of the most asked questions for my agents when they bring me a problem, I say, did you call them? Did you call them? And immediately when the hands go like this, I go, no, you didn't call them. You text them. That's why you have this problem. It's so simple. We live in a world where basic human elements get forgotten. Just the sound of your voice will sometimes, a DM, you DM because you don't have access, right? You text because you don't have access. You email because you don't have access. You'd much rather look somebody in the eye and say, will you do this? But you use those mechanisms to drive interpersonal interactions, which is what really moves the needle for people. So, Darren, this has been great, man. I think we're up against the clock here, so I just want to thank you immensely. The questions were insightful. Your answers were phenomenal. I love exposing people like you to my audience. Hopefully, I brought it enough to make it useful for you as well. With that, I guess we'll close up shop here for the day. As a reminder, folks, you can catch us weekly. We go live in our Facebook group every Wednesday. Reach out if you want to get access to that. Like I said, we'd love to have you in on the conversation. Find us on Facebook at The Resource Podcast, at J Pitts Realtor, on Instagram, where you'll find snippets of the show, lots of cool stuff Patrick's doing with Reels, at J_Pitts on TikTok, youtube.com/JPitts Realtor. Don't forget about our sister piece of content. JTP University will come with another episode this week on that as well. Darren, once again, man, we appreciate you and all you do. Anything we can do for you, don't ever hesitate to reach out. But with that, I am Jay Pitts, broker owner at RE/MAX Premier Properties. Thanks for listening to Resource.